What's Nintendo's plan B? What are the 2024 games that will sell 5, 10, 15 million and hold the line for Switch until Switch 2 arrives? Even if it's true that Nintendo's 2024 lineup was to feature Switch 2 and that this has been delayed into 2025, I don't think a company as singularly cautious as Nintendo goes into a company-defining transition period without something up their sleeve. You know they had a plan B, and that plan has to involve at least one, if not two or three, juggernaut sales titles. You can't last a year with great but niche titles like Another Code and Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. Even Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, a game I'd expect to do very well given the success of Luigi's Mansion 3, isn't going to spare Nintendo from a massive downturn in game sales following a year where Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Bros. Wonder both blew past 10 million copies within weeks. So, to forecast Nintendo's lineup, we need to look at low-effort, high-selling titles. Relying on legacy sales from the deep Switch library will get them a good way, but without liars like Mario Kart 8 notwithstanding, most games sell the bulk of their units early on, and the company doesn't need games that are going to continue to sell indefinitely, they just need games that make a big splash now. I think they will want at least one 10 million seller, and I think there's a very strong chance they achieve it. That might sound like an impossible reach for a late-stage console, but Nintendo loves their ambitious targets, and they literally can't afford to let momentum on the Switch be snuffed out if they want to give the Switch 2 the healthiest and most hype launch it can. Therefore, here are 7 possible Switch games that could do gangbuster sales for Nintendo this year. Number 1. Super Mario Galaxy 2. Conspicuous by its absence from the 3D All-Stars collection in 2020, Galaxy 2 has already had the misfortune of being a late-cycle console release, and as a result it was overlooked, pulling in sales well underneath most mainline Marios. Nevertheless, it is still a game that people love. It is still a game that is hugely respected and reviewed absolutely amazingly, and with a year or so to develop it, time enough to spruce up the title and give it at least a modicum of extra polish, perhaps some side modes, it would still effectively be a new game for the vast majority of the Switch base, the first 3D Mario game in nearly 4 years. Using the game in this way does prevent them doing a full-of-fat remake on the new system, but remaking Mario games has never been something the company has gone for, and so a lower-effort remaster for the Switch seems like a better bet for them, especially under the current circumstances. Of course, Galaxy 2 does require some work to get its controls right, but I'd be surprised if Nintendo hasn't been working on this at some point, since a Galaxy 2 re-release has to be inevitable eventually, even if it's only on NSO in a few years' time. Number 2. Mario Party Online. NDCube are almost certainly working on a new Mario Party, but with Mario Kart and 3D Mario likely to take precedent in 2025, that game could still be a couple of years away now. However, if they follow the 3-year party schedule, with 2018 being Super Mario Party and Superstars releasing in 2021, and why wouldn't they keep this schedule since Mario Party games are almost always top sellers, there is space for a new entry this year, but having had a new game in the form of Super Mario Party and a remake in the form of Superstars, how do they differentiate this next title? My hunch is they will want to leverage the Nintendo Switch Online in a big way to emphasize the importance of having a subscription before Switch 2 arrives. To do this, they could take a leaf out of NDCube's most recent endeavor, Everybody 1-2-Switch. Yes, I know that game didn't exactly set the internet ablaze with enthusiasm, but the integration of phone technology with games is a big win for Nintendo if they can get it to work, especially in the wake of their recent collaboration with DNA to build more mobile titles and more mobile infrastructure. With so many people having Switch consoles, the potential for a game that reaches out widely has never been higher, and with the Mario Party branding, this has a good chance of selling extremely well. Number 3. Switch Sports 2. The original Switch Sports sold 12.48 million copies as of the end of last year, and Ring Fit Adventure, another fitness title for Switch, also did gangbuster numbers. It's been 2 years since the last fitness title, and Switch Sports showed that even a relatively bare-bones game could be successful. Could Nintendo bosh together a quick sequel in record time? Let's assume that the internal delay was indeed decided last December, and that Nintendo has already been prototyping other sports with the potential of creating a cross-gen Switch 2 title. It would still be a rush to get a full title to market in record time, but with the Switch Sports engine already in place, and with expectations pretty low after Switch Sports was on the lo-fi end, it feels believable that they could rush out a title for a September reveal that anchors their lineup in October or November. It would probably come away short of Switch Sports sales, but there are many options still on the table: boxing, baseball, table tennis, frisbee golf, fencing, lots of games that they developed for Wii Sports and that series, but that have yet to see daylight on the Switch. Number 4. Pokemon X and Y HD. I've explained more thoroughly in a separate video why I think this is a likely option, but with Pokemon Legends ZA next year and the strong chance that the Pokemon Company will want to slow its roll on banner remakes of old generations so that they can launch on hardware with a brighter future, there's a lot of scope for a lower effort port of a title to come and slide into the 2024 holiday lineup. 3DS porting isn't easy, the tech is very different, but with Luigi's Mansion 2 HD and Miitopia, Nintendo has form with remaking 3DS games, and this could still be a less challenging transition. I've seen the argument that if Legend ZA was a cross-gen title originally slated for 2024, there would never have been a need for a remaster, and it wouldn't have been put into development, and so wouldn't be able to be released in 2024. However, the last Legends was released following the brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl games, and I can easily imagine that the original Switch to Switch 2 transition plan involved XY remakes in July to end the original Switch with a bang before the launch of Pokemon ZA in November. A 1-2 punch that would have made 2024 an absolute juggernaut year for the Pokemon Company and indeed Nintendo. This is essentially replicating what they did in 2021, where they had a 1-2 punch of the Diamond and Pearl remakes and the Pokemon Legends title in January. However, that strategy also has a trapdoor built in that the XY remakes could easily push to the 2024 holiday window, something I still think is likely to happen now that Pokemon ZA is in 2025. Number 5. A Mario Kart Double Pack. Nintendo doesn't tend to re-release Mario Kart titles, preferring instead to remake tracks, so under normal circumstances the odds of seeing old games again is incredibly low. In particular, if the next Mario Kart title is cross-gen, I really don't think they're going to want to have another Switch Mario Kart title competing. But let's assume that the next Mario Kart title is not going to be cross-gen. It's not a dead cert after all. Mario Kart Ace has been such an outlandish seller for Switch that they may decide that they want to make the next one exclusive to nudge as many players as possible to make the jump. But they also know that not everyone will make that jump straight away, and so that huge Mario Kart advertising blitz that will inevitably launch the Switch 2 will therefore be wasted on potentially millions of slower transitioners who don't want to make the jump just yet. How do you give that market a crust from the table without ruining their dinner? Well, Mario Kart Double Dash is just sitting on GameCube, and with Nintendo's team at Nerd having already developed a way to make GameCube games look at least passably good on Switch, boosting it over to the new system would be easily possible. Mario Kart Wii would easily go alongside it. I'm less convinced they'll want to go the full All-Stars route, since the DS titles would probably take a bit more porting, but Double Dash and Wii are such low-hanging fruit for Nintendo that I think if they do their 2020 trick of making this a limited edition title, it would probably condense the sales window and mean these games would be completely forgotten by the time the 2027 rolls around and the tracks from this new game are cannibalized into another wave of DLC for the new Mario Kart. Number 6. Super Smash Bros. Melee. Masahiro Sakurai has gone back to work. Logically, he's going to be working on the new Super Smash Bros. Title, but to stop the kind of intense burnout that he experienced before, perhaps this one will buck the trend and release a little later into Switch 2's life cycle. After all, Nintendo can ride out the next Mario Kart for high-profile DLC for a good 3 years easily, at which point they will then need another title to fill the slot and to hold the attention of people with a regular trickle of high-profile DLC. 2028 is going to be the 10th anniversary of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and so that could be a great time to target a 10th anniversary edition with DLC to follow up, taking the Switch 2 to the middle and later years of its generation with a new Super Smash Bros. Announcement every few months. And the 2028 deadline gives Sakurai a significant amount of lead time, potentially 5 years if plans began fulminating in 2023. But if the next Smash is still years away, does that mean Nintendo ignores the franchise until then? They might. This is Nintendo, and they understand that sometimes keeping people hungry confers value on their products when they do launch. But you can also imagine that while plans for the next Smash are being worked through, Sakurai could also lead a team to bring back some of the original Smash titles. In fact, even if he isn't working on a new Smash, I think it's likely he's going to start working closely with Nintendo as the schedule of NSO starts to spotlight the era of Smash titles. So how would they revive Smash Bros. Past? An All-Stars style bundle is definitely possible. The original leak of N64 games for Nintendo Switch Online strongly suggested that N64 Smash is coming to NSO eventually, but it's quite plausible they either wanted to wait until Sakurai was ready to sign it off, or they decided to boot it into the long grass and do something more with it in the meantime. Having Sakurai approve versions of the N64, GameCube and Wii editions at this point would probably be helpful, even if Nintendo decides to keep their powder dry and releasing them for quite a long time. Still, Given the escalating complexity of licensing characters as the game progresses, Nintendo would have a far easier time getting Melee out the door compared with Brawl. Even though Nintendo has a fairly good relationship with Sega and Konami, it still adds a layer of complexity and bureaucracy to proceedings if they have to go and license Snake and Sonic. Plus, if the next full Smash game is another version of Ultimate, then bringing Subspace Emissary over to that, a sort of everyone and also everything, is here, could be a really good selling point for it. In this case, they might want to keep their powder dry on Brawl. Number 7. New Super Mario Bros. All-Stars. 2D Mario sells. Super Smash Bros. Wonder crossed the 10-figure sales mark in 2 months. New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, despite having a 10-syllable title and being a bare-bones remake of a title with relatively muted critical reception, is still in the top 10 Switch sellers, probably helped by being a pack-in, but nevertheless showing healthy growth throughout. With Super Mario Bros. 40th anniversary around the corner, you can bet that they've at least mooted the idea of remake collections, and the new Super Mario Bros. Games represent the golden opportunity for them. And had Switch 2 launched in 2024, they would have needed these kinds of games for 2025, because you would have expected at least one, if not both, of Mario Kart or the next 3D Mario to launch in 2024, leaving space for more celebratory titles in the anniversary year. But at this point, I fully expect September 2025 to be reserved for the next 3D Mario. Now, remember I said about Nintendo having a plan B? I think they've used New Super Mario Bros. As a plan B before. If you think back to January 2019, that was a really odd time to launch a new 2D Mario game, albeit a port. And yet it completely makes sense if you think back to the game that launched the month before, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Just think what would have happened to their 2018 lineup if Super Smash Bros. Had ended up being delayed. I think U Deluxe was a belt and braces game, a big title ready to anchor the 2018 holiday window just in case Ultimate wasn't ready. And other new games could do the same thing. I could see them deciding not to bother with all 3 titles. They might just focus on bringing the Wii version across, maybe adding some new levels, a lot of online functionality and competitions. But having a new Super Mario Bros. Game as a backup seems to be something they've done before, and I think here it would be a perfect opportunity to roll out a title that would bring in strong sales without in any way undercutting any previous or subsequent Mario titles. So this is a forecasting channel, and I try to give you likelihoods. I will happily concede that individually, most of these are relatively unlikely, although I think X and Y remasters are actually a very strong shout. But I think having at least one of any of these 7 releasing this year does feel more possible. In fact, I'm going to put that as a 90% likelihood. I think Mario Party in particular stands out when you consider that 2017 had a Mario Party title on the 3DS, but irrespective, it seems to me that they are going to want to have something that is a strong seller. In fact, what about the overall chance of Nintendo having a 10 million plus seller this year? I think it's tough to imagine they quite pull it off by the end of December, given that the likeliest window for release of such games is very late in the year, and we might not know if the game crosses the sales threshold afterwards, because the data might not be released. So I think we can say if a game crosses 8 million by December, there's a strong chance that it will pick up the remaining sales it needs to get to, or at least very close to, the 10 million mark in the year or so that follows. I think therefore there's a 70% chance that Nintendo can release a game that sells 8 million plus copies by the end of 2023, and I feel about as certain as I can be that this is what they're going to be targeting internally. For more on Pokemon X and Y specifically, check out my latest video. For more on NDCube, check out my deep dive on them. And for more Nintendo forecasting, please subscribe. See you soon.